We're going to go. All right, we're going to go ahead and record to the cloud. First and foremost, hey, y'all. Thank y'all so much for your patience. My name is Shawn Capell, bringing you greetings from the great state of Houston. Well, state of Houston. No, it's the city of Houston, the state of Texas. It's been a long day. But we're going to go ahead and get started. This evening, I am going to be discussing how we can move forward as a field with competency as well as diversity. We know that there are a lot of things within our field that have been hot button topics over the last few months, and this has definitely been one of those things. And as RBTs, I'm super excited to talk to you all because a lot of the times when I do presentations, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I get a chance to talk to a lot of behavior analysts. And although it's great to talk to BCBAs and BCBABs regarding competency and diversity, you all are the ones that are on the field every single day, putting in the work and doing what you need to do to make sure that our kiddos are indeed successful. I kind of enjoy this kind of stuff. I do have the chat open. I will admit that there are times where it does distract me. If y'all have questions as I move through this, please just throw it in the chat. I'll do my best. Literally, will do my best to try to get to as many of those as possible, or you can use the question and answer function. Either which way is completely up to you. Since I know, thank you, Zoom, I'm on a time constraint, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into this. What I will also do, I will send you all this slide deck once we get finished, just so you all can go ahead and kind of peruse through as you would like. First and foremost, secondly, I do have to say thank you so very much to Dr. Tag for allowing me to be here with you all on this afternoon. When she sent me the invitation to participate with you all, kind of had to second guess it, like, wait, who is she talking? Like, was this meant for me? Are you sure? So again, it's always just thank you so much for not only for allowing me or inviting me in, but thank you to each and every one of you to taking the time to expand your professional horizons and really commit to the science that we know is ABA. Also, before I start this presentation, I do like to tell everyone in any presentation that I do that this is indeed a safe space. I do not, under any circumstances, intend to change who you are at your core. I can't do that in a 45, 50-minute time frame. I'm not that good. But what I will say is it's my intention to hopefully spark some interest and plant some seeds in your mind about some areas and some things that we can change. And so for if nothing else, I would like to be able to at least start a conversation and kind of have you all take that and kind of chew on it for a couple of days, if not for the remainder of your career. I'm just saying. Presentation, we're going to go through that later. But first and foremost, I want you all to get in a time machine with me, okay? I want you to get a time machine and I want you to think back to when you first started in the field of ABA. And I understand for some of you, that might have been last week. For some of you, you might have been doing this for 25 years. Really depends. But I want you to think about, as you're going back to when you first started up till now, what are some things that have been good? What are some things that you've been able to accomplish? Have you been able to get a kiddo to toilet train in 2 days? Have you been able to engage parents in an effective manner? What are the things that you've done that you're super duper proud of? But we know that everything that we do, there's bitter and sweet. So what are some things that have been a little, not the greatest? Some things that have been bad, hours, pay, those things, just the bad things. As well as what are some things that have been considered to be ugly? And when I say ugly, I mean like those really messy, dark, dank things that have happened where you think back and you still cringe even now to this day. And the reason why I do that is because in order for us to identify where we need to move forward in our field, we need to understand where we come from. And we do understand, and we have to understand that everyone comes from a different perspective. Because we are all different people. We deal with humans and we are humans. So one of the things that I like to tell people is that, or ask you is, what are some things out of those things that you've identified? What are some things that you wish we could continue? And what are some things that you would like us to continue? So tell you a little bit about me. This is my baby. That's my mama. This was the first brand new car I had ever purchased in my life. This was my 2014 brand new Nissan Altima that had a sunroof, and I was super excited about that. I had graduated from my training program at Capella University, where I got my master's in ABA. I wanted new everything. And when I mean new everything, I wanted new furniture. I was on it. I was super excited just to be able to move to the next phase of my life. However, I realized one thing, that although that car was great, wonderful, and fabulous, if I didn't maintain that car, if I didn't look at the mileage and do my regularly scheduled oil changes and maintenance, that car was going to put me down very quickly. Over time, I'm not going to lie to you, my car got maintained sometimes it didn't, sometimes things got stretched. And how it all ended? Well, earlier this year, I went to get into that same lovely car that I had for quite a few years, tried to turn her on, and she said, nope, we're done. So of course, as I didn't necessarily take care of that car the best way I should have, in full disclosure, she put me down. And she put me down at the worst possible time, because I was actually on my way to do an assessment with a kiddo. Lovely conversation. So with that experience in mind of not taking care of the machines and the tools that we have, let's think about your experience. What we understand is that if we don't tend to something, unfortunately, we know it's going to break down. My Nissan, who is currently, might be in the scrapyard, I don't know. I didn't take care of her the way that I was supposed to, and she indeed broke down. And the thing we have to also ask ourselves is, how do we ensure maintenance on the fields that we love and the fields that we give our time, sweat, energy, tears to? How do we upgrade our understanding? Because we understand that, we hopefully understand that we have to indeed continue to upgrade. We are not the same people that we were 3 weeks ago. Hopefully you're not the same person you were this morning, in a good way. But like that car, our field needs a trip to the mechanic. And hopefully we're going to do that a little bit on this evening. So I would typically have you all take out a piece of paper and pen, but just given time constraints, I just want you all to think about some of these terms. So I'm going to put up a couple of terms on the screen, and they're going to be 4. I want you all to think about these terms and what comes to mind. What do you think of? Come up with an operational definition as you're identifying these terms, okay? Again, they don't have to be right, they don't have to be wrong. They are indeed your definition. So the first word that I'm going to put up is diversity. What is diversity to you? How do you define diversity? We've talked about it ad nauseum for months, but what is diversity? The next one I'll put up is culture. We all have one, just like opinions, we all have one. However, what is culture? How are we defining that culture? We know as behavior analysts and as RBTs, our bread and butter is an operational definition. So what is the operational definition of culture? Next, we have competency. That dreaded word that nobody likes because it ties into a whole lot of other stuff. But competency, what is competency? Everybody wants to be competent, but do we really know what that actually means? Can we operationally define competency? Can it be observable? Can it actually be measurable? And the last word that I'm going to put up is bias. I like including this word partly because some folks, not nobody here, just saying in general, some folks feel, oh, I don't have any bias. I'm so great and I'm just so open-minded. Well, flag on the play, everybody has a bias of some kind. And we'll talk about that a little bit down the road. So as we're talking about things, and hopefully as you were thinking kind of on the fly about some of those things, the question that I would ask you is, was that bad? Was that so bad to think and try to identify definitions or operational definitions for those particular targets? Did you consider it to be easy or challenging? For me, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The first time I did this particular exercise, I thought I was going, I'm like, I don't ever want to do a talk on this again because I can't even come up with a definition on this stuff. And the reason why it was so challenging for me is because it was hard for me to wrap my head or to wrap my arms fully around a very robust and very complex topic. I kind of like to put it that you're trying to wrap your hands around an elephant. And no matter how you try to do it, it's just a massive, massive thing that we need to get our hands around. So the next question I'll ask is that were you able to come up with something that you would consider to be clear, accurate, and concise? That's our field right there, right? Everything is clear, it is accurate, and it is concise. So could you come up with it? Next, were you able to remove your personal feelings from it? Because I know what everyone says, stone face, you have to be a clinician, you have to be, yeah, that's great. But we all have personal feelings because I know I do. I will tell y'all that now. As well as, so now that we figured all that fun stuff out, let's roll up our sleeves and now let's get to work. Okay, so there is a quote that I have lived by for a very long time in my life. And it comes from a book that is entitled Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it was a book that I was asked to read in like high school. And I kind of didn't read it. Got the book, it sat on a bookshelf for a couple of years. I got bored in the middle of a lockdown, so I read it. Best decision of my life. And the quote simply says that most everything that you really needed to know about how to live, on what to do and how to do it, you learned in kindergarten. We understand that wisdom is not found at the top of the graduate school mountain, which they would have told me that, but it's found at the bottom of the sand pile in Sunday school. We're taught things like play fair, don't hit each other, wash your hands before you eat. We're taught to be nice to be nice to people, hold each other's hands when we walk across the street. We're taught all of these things. We're taught to be aware of our surroundings in kindergarten. But I can guarantee you, if you look at some of the people, not behavior analysts or RBTs, but just regular smegular people in your day-to-day life, half of these people you would probably assume flunked out of kindergarten because they just have no awareness whatsoever. And the reason why I think it is important that we do this is because up until recently, our field has the ability to change generations, not just lives, not just families, but generations when it is done right. However, there are instances where we get it so wrong because we're missing out on two things, diversity and culture. And this is the reason, and everybody's like, well, what do you mean? How do you know? Oh my Lord, I don't know. Well, I finally have an exemplar to show you. So first and foremost, what you're about to see is not my opinion, Dr. Tech, it's nobody's opinion up here. It is literally meant for your, for example, that's it. So don't at me on social media, don't cancel me. I didn't do it. But a couple of years, about I think it was about 2 years ago, the time is kind of blended together on me, but right after the George Floyd incident, in a Facebook group of individuals who are behavior analysts and dedicated to behavior analysis, someone created a post. And the post was simply that, and it asked, what type of social skills and safety awareness programs do we develop for Black clients? How do we describe the police when teaching community helpers? How do you develop stimulus control / discrimination for complying to demands versus self-advocating? And if you remember around that George Floyd incident, there was a lot, I don't know, and I remember telling this to a good friend and a colleague of mine. I kept telling them, I'm like, something seems different. Something in this situation just seems, something broke because everyone was in an uproar, and rightfully so, do not get me wrong. But when this question came through, I saw it and I was like, oh, I'm interested to see how this is going, because even as an individual that identifies as an African-American male, I don't even know how to teach these things sometimes to my kiddos. So I was like, all right, let me see how this goes. I honestly went to sleep, woke up from a nap, and this is what was saw. I realized that I had a bunch of messages on my phone. I looked, I thought somebody had died, but this happened. And this was put up by the administrator of that particular group. And it states that the post in the on ABA programming specific to Black people was removed as inflammatory. The last time I checked, ABA is a science used to change socially important behaviors. The color of someone's skin is not relevant, and the post was intended to be a political statement. It goes on to say that if you try to talk about it here, we're going to shut it down. There's a group, go talk about it over there. Now, you could probably imagine that that did not go over well in that Facebook group. There were almost 400 comments under this particular post. The post was pulled down. Then folks got reported. It was this whole big hubbub. And right after that, somebody crazily asked me a question of what I thought. And I simply could say to them, now we have something to point to. There are behavior analysts, there are clinicians who feel that the color of someone's skin does not matter. And in their world, in their community, that might be the case. However, we know that we seldomly ever provide services to the individuals in our social circle, and just folks that walk like us and talk like us and think like us and act like us. So we have to understand, and we have to take into consideration not only where we stand in our cultural understanding, but where our individuals are. You're right, you might not see color, but we do. But if you've ever, my friends will tell you, I typically I'm not that person that goes in on social media, but that day I had to have somebody take my phone from me because I wasn't ready to go. But the one thing I had to ask myself was, are you serious? The first thing that came to mind was, are you serious? There were some other words in there, but again, we're presenting, so I'm cleaning it up a little bit. But one of the things, I was hot like fire. And then after that, I had to stop and I had to catch myself. And I the behavior analyst came out and I'm like, okay, let's analyze this situation. And I was able to break down four potential MOs or establishing operations for this particular problem, behavior, or statement, or whatever you want to call it. So the first thing I had to ask myself was, maybe it's a lack of training. Maybe this particular individual had never gone through any kind of competency training in their career. Maybe they just didn't know. Nobody ever taught them. Nobody ever trained them. Then I'm like, okay, well, that might be the case. And then I'm like, well, maybe it's a lack of accountability. Because chances are, if you say it on Facebook, you've said it somewhere else. And if you said it in front of other people and nobody, as my mother would say, has checked you on it there, then it's okay. It's been reinforced. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to continue to say it. Then I moved on like, okay, well, folks were talking about, we're going to report this individual to the BACB. And I had to go to the ethical code and say, okay, well, if they report them, what are they reporting him for? What violation has this individual engaged in? Found nothing there. And then I came down to, it must just be a genuine lack of understanding, because it was just a genuine lack of understanding. But all in all, one of the things I did know is that somebody did not pass kindergarten. I don't know how they got past it, because obviously they didn't learn some of the basic competencies of being just a nice person. So let's do a quick little intro to multiculturalism and diversity. So we know that multiculturalism and diversity is an insanely broad topic that a whole lot of folks have done a lot of work, myself included, have tried to kind of bring down a little bit. We also understand that one presentation will not give you everything you need. I wish it could. I really do. I wish it could. I really wish it could. But what one presentation can do, and what my objective is always, is to not only identify your areas of opportunity, areas where you can improve and hone your skills, but to be able to identify the areas of strength, as well as to help you develop a personal growth plan for your future. I can tell you this, I don't know everything. I've written a book on it. I still don't know. I don't claim to know everything. I am okay with that. Perfectly fine with that, because I'm continuing to learn. And we also have to understand that terminology, just like with everything, terminology is indeed key. So if we're going to talk about culture, let's define it. So the question I'll ask you is, what is your culture? And I love this. This picture on the screen, because this is a fairly good representation of what culture is. Culture is not just skin color. Culture is a combination of a whole bunch of stuff. It's your beliefs. It's the way you were brought up. It's the literature you read. It's the knowledge you have. It's the training, the languages you speak. I am currently in Houston. I'm telling you this, there are 15 different cultures in the city of Houston alone. It is mind-blowing a lot of the times. It's the way we interact. It's the way we view our world. So what I can say for sure is that culture, when we talk about you, the culture you have is a unique culture that only you have. There is no one else in the world that has ever been or will ever be that has the identical culture as you. I don't care if you have an identical twin, they still are different. Because we understand that in order for us to be able to define culture, culture comes from individuals of a particular social group. If you are a member of a particular group, you define the culture. We are ABA practitioners. We are RBTs. We are insert whatever certification you have there. If you don't have a certification, regardless, you still work in the field of ABA. So we define our culture. No one can tell us, well, they try to, but no one can successfully tell us who we are and how we do what we do. We define that to the world around us. There are social environments. I know for a fact, Dr. Tag is in North Carolina, and I am from North Carolina, and I understand that there is a culture and a complexity of North Carolinian that is different than Texas. I completely understand it. There are different social environments because they have Bojangles, but Dr. Tag, I am happy to announce that Bojangles is officially moving to Texas at the beginning of next year. I am more excited for that than ever before. So it comes from our social group. It comes from our social environments, as well as it's our self-identity. You cannot tell me what my culture is. Why? And I think this is the reason why a lot of the times we get it mixed up. And a lot of folks just see culture as skin color, sexual orientation, and that's kind of as far as they go. Because what do you see when I walk in the room? You see me, you see my skin color, you see certain outward expressions of who I am. And a lot of folks think, oh, that's as far as it goes. No, you got to go there. I'm an onion. There are layers to this thing, just like there are layers to you as well. So to me, a good definition of culture is kind of a hodgepodge of beliefs, rules, collective identity, as well as knowledge that gets mashed all into one. And that central point where everything collides, that's you. And the reason why this is important is because if I can identify what my culture is and where I am in my walk and in my process of identifying who I am as an individual, I can then walk into a situation with a client or with a staff member or with whomever, and I know that I can be receptive as well as aware of cultural differences between the two. I'll give you an example. Dr. Tag is Dr. Tag. She has a doctoral level degree. I'm yet working on mine. Great. There is a way when we walk into the situation, I understand that there is a culture of a PhD. I'm currently going through one, and I understand the process that takes. So there's going to be a certain level of respect that I give to her simply off of that PhD. Not because she's just an absolutely amazing individual, but you're going to get that. That's cultural to me. To me, that's the way I was bred. That's who individuals that I have connected with in the past that are doctors or that are PhD level clinicians, that's the way they've wanted to be addressed. Now, if somebody tells me, okay, Shawn, don't call me doc. My name is XYZ, and I start calling them XYZ, they might be members of a different cultural group, but I'm going to shift and go with them on this way. All right, you want? I say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. I'm from the South. It's what I do. So when part of my culture, part of my cultural belief is those are the rules. You say those things. When people say, don't call me ma'am, don't call me sir, I really don't know what else to call them because I'm not calling you by your first name. I was hit in the mouth a lot as a kid. I was the kiddo that was the quick-mouthed one that always got into trouble. But somehow I still have all my teeth. But when we talk about culture, let's talk about defining culture. So there are a couple of definitions that we have to look at. So first and foremost is awareness. We have to be culturally aware. We have to be culturally aware. Yeah, that's great, but what is it? So it encompasses the ability for you to examine your own culture and values and understand how the culture of others can shape behavior and your interactions with others. So you're aware, you know that you are not the same as everyone else. Hopefully, if we get nothing checked off the list tonight, we at least check off this cultural awareness checklist for you all. Then once you get the awareness, you're good. You understand where you are with the situation. We then bump you down. Well, hopefully you bump up to sensitivity. And it gives you, sensitivity is the ability to understand and embrace cultural differences and recognize how your culture can influence your professional practice. And I know what you're going to say. My culture, I have no opinions when it comes to working with kiddos. You sure? Everyone has an opinion of some kind, and it goes a lot deeper. I'll give you an example. There is a lot of communication. There's a lot of talk about, pronouns and making sure that we're, allowing individuals to identify how they want to identify, rightfully so. Well, how do you do that for an individual that's considered to be nonverbal? You can hold up 2 items, but if they don't have certain abilities, it's going to be hard to do that. Now, you might feel boys play with these items, girls play with these items, and that might be your belief in your head. But when we're dealing with individuals, you can't tell me that doesn't creep in sometimes. Competency. Cultural competency is the capability to develop an awareness of your own culture, beliefs, values, and biases while acquiring knowledge of the norms and behaviors of other cultures. So the reason why I love competency so much, this particular term, is because you're able to do it on 2 folds. You're able to gain understanding and knowledge, true knowledge, from other individual cultures, but you're also doing a self-examination of yourself. You're understanding, I believe this is the way I believe. I believe this for, okay, where does that come from? You're able to sit down and have a conversation and identify why you believe what you believe, because then you're able to identify how does that impact and weave itself into work. And then lastly, in the terms aspect, is humility. So humility is a great thing. Humility is when you are able to focuses on individuals and organizations and it focuses on them examining not only their culture and but having them recognize the ability and the need for continuing learning of practitioners from other cultures, as well as it allows them to become other-oriented, to where it's not just I'm gaining this information because I want this information. It's I'm gaining this information and I'm implementing this information in order to help others. But I'm also it's not a one-time thing. We're continuing to do this because you're going through this personal critique, and it's an ongoing, lifelong process. And you're probably wondering, well, why wasn't this presentation called cultural humility and not cultural competency? Well, the reason being is because notice how humility says lifelong process. That's going to happen over and over again. At least it should. A lot of the times I find that if we can get folks to competency, just understanding you are not the center of the universe. You are not the center of the universe. There are other folks floating around out here with you, and they do impact what you do. If we can get there, we have reached the money pit. Okay. if y'all can't tell, I love talking about this stuff. So if I'm going too fast or if I'm talking too much, just let me know. So we've talked about culture. Now, there is a term that I have grown to love and hate at the same time. That term is diversity. Why? And the reason why this term gets me so much is because there is a difference between showcase diversity. You know, that we're just going, come on, everybody get in a picture, everybody smile, look happy. And there's a difference between that showcase, that surface level, and that true diversity. And the reason why I say that is because we know that the definition, thank you, Webster. The definition of diversity is the practice or Lord, I can't even read my own writing. The practice or process of including and involving people from a range of different social, ethnic backgrounds, and different genders, sexual orientations, etc. So it's not just this show of everybody get in, we're gonna sing Kumbaya, and as soon as the camera goes away, we go back to our regularly scheduled program. Diversity is having a multiplicity of thought across all areas. It's not just as RBT. I'm gonna go off script here, so don't judge me. But a lot of the times in organizations, what we see regarding diversity is the RBTs are a diverse work group, maybe even the BCBAs. If you work in a clinic, maybe your administrators in your clinic base are fairly diverse. You know, there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of thought. However, the folks up top in corporate office that are making the decisions, that are getting the six-figure salaries, are not as diverse as we would like them to be. One of the things that people always ask me is, why do you focus so much on increasing the impact of minorities in our field? And I always tell them, look at our board. Look at the people who are leading our board. Look at the people who are those thought leaders in those in certain areas. They're not always as diverse as we would like them to be. So how can you make a decision about me when you have never spoken to me? You have not gone through what I've gone through. You don't understand what I am dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So that's why it's don't just send me don't send me a survey saying, well, what can we do to improve, and never look at the resume. Come have a conversation with me, because I could tell you some stuff. I'm just saying. I see some amen, so I guess I'm on the right track. And some folks will say, oh, our field is super diverse. It's the lies you tell. So I pulled this information from the BACB back in 2020. They have not released updates yet. Can't wait for this to happen. But in July of 2020, we indicated that roughly, and I'll just go with the RBT number, there are about 77,000 RBTs. And I'd like to say that we probably are at 100,000, if not more, at this point. And if you look, and I'm going to go specifically to the RBT graph, we only started giving out the RBT certification in 2014. I remember when that newsletter came out. That's how old I am. But y'all went from zero to almost to insane numbers. And it's great. Here's the problem. We're diverse. Right. Great. Wonderful. But almost 60% of our field is white. There's no judgment here. I'm just saying 60% of our field is white. And more importantly, 85.75% of our field is female, or identifies as female. So traditionally, when people see me walk in the door as an African-American male BCBA, I am considered to be a unicorn. Partly because they're like, wait, you exist? Yeah, there's a couple of us floating around here everywhere. And you would think, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I'll tell you this. I met my first male BCBA outside of my graduate school program. I met them, Lord. I met them in 2020. in 2020, but I met my first Black BCBA 2 years ago. And I've had my certification for quite some time. So that should tell you that although we're making these decisions, we're impacting the kiddos that we're working with, we are literally changing generations. But sometimes it's easier out. One of the things that I love to tell this story as I fast forward through my presentation here. One of the things that I love to tell about some of the kiddos that I worked with is I had the privilege of working with a family that stayed in a fairly rough neighborhood. And I mean rough neighborhood. This was up in Newark, New Jersey. And if you know anything about Newark, there are some areas that you don't want to go into, even like in 12 o'clock noontime. It's just a bad neighborhood. Well, they had a couple of different changes to staffing. Nobody wanted to go there. The previous BCBA had a car broken into. So of course I came onto an organization. They were like, we've got the perfect case for you. Okay, great. It's in Newark. Okay. They were like, are you sure? And they were so hesitant. And I'm like, guys, it's fine. Like, I don't stay that far from there. So it's not a really big deal. Well, one of the things that I realized is when I sat down and had my first conversation with mom literally, bless her heart, mom's first thing out of her mouth was, I'm so glad they sent me somebody Black. I said, wow, wait, what's going on here? And she literally explained to me that it was a predominantly African-American household, and it was a predominantly African-American community. And she was just like, the problem that she didn't think the other BCBA got was that when you pulled up in a fairly nice car with all of this stuff just strewn about everywhere in this kind of a neighborhood, you kind of stick out. So even if you're going down the street working with a kiddo, you kind of stick out. Everybody knows why you're there. So she kept saying that you understand what I'm saying. You understand what I'm going to. And honestly, mom, who had been a very, very, very problematic client before, me and her became very, 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 very good. We were able to have conversations, and I'm no longer a part of her. She follows me on Facebook, the whole situation. Now, and again, it's not unethical, so don't report me to the board. Thank you so much. But why was this important? Because we were able to relate. It wasn't I'm the BCBA coming in trying to tell you how to run your life. But what I understood was there was an intersectionality there that I had to consider. So it wasn't just the family in the home that was in charge or that had a part of programming. He had a bodega. And if you don't know about a bodega, it's a corner store. There was a bodega down the street. Mommy wanted him to walk down to the bodega to get his snacks if he wanted to. So what I had to do, I had to have a conversation with the bodega owner. There was a barbershop 2 doors down from the bodega that was kind of like smack dab in between. And what we would do is when we would send him, because he got to the point where he became independent, I had the barbershop. If they saw him walking, one of the barbers would come out and make sure that he got where he was going, just to make sure nobody messed with him. When he got to the bodega, we would phone ahead to the bodega to tell them, hey, so-and-so is coming in, make sure, he's good. To this day, he is now 19 years old. He knows everybody on that block and the community at large. At one point, he got lost. Well, he walked out of the house, made a wrong turn. I can tell you, and it brings tears to my eyes, that community, we didn't have to call the police. We had no idea where he was. We didn't have to do any of that. This mother made 2 phone calls to that bodega owner and to the owner, to the pastor of the church that was a little bit farther down. Took them 45 minutes to find him. And that was because they got on the phone with their networks. So when he was following an ice cream truck, that's a whole nother story. But again, it's that village. So in this situation, I had to go in and teach, first and foremost, think about it from this perspective. If we're supposed to be transitioning our kiddos into their communities, why not get their communities and get their villages involved a little bit earlier? But you wouldn't do that if you didn't take culture into consideration. So there's an assessment that And I like, in order for me to do this, let's start with you. First and foremost, Dr. Tag, tell me how I'm doing on time, because I can talk forever. So the question that I want you to ask yourself is, who are you? I'm talking about who are you at your core? Take all the makeup off, all of that fun stuff. Who are you as an individual? Ask yourself, how do you self-identify in respect to your culture? What culture do you identify with? As well as, how does the world identify your personal culture? I'm not gonna lie to you. Not everybody's going to agree with you. It is what it is. Not gonna go into that, but it is what it is what it is. Some folks don't like behavior analysts and don't like RBTs. They think we create robots. I'm sorry, we don't do that. At least I don't do that, and I don't believe any of you all do that. However, I know that sometimes, that's just a perception, which we are working our best to try to overturn. But then the question that I asked, again, that last one is, how does the world identify your professional culture? I've had people tell me all the time, oh, you must be a saint. I could never work with children on the spectrum. You must be a saint. Oh, you must have all this patience. And I always tell them, I actually don't. I actually don't care for people, to be completely honest with you. And they're like, well, how do you square that? I'm typically a very introverted individual. However, when working with a child with a special need, I know that there's something going on there. I know that that's what my calling is. That's why I was put on earth, to work with this particular kiddo. It's the rest of these people that don't have a diagnosis and claim themselves to be typically developing. Those are the ones that scare me, because you don't know what you're getting there. So once you've gone through all of this, again, once you start with who you are, you have to then figure out, okay, next step. You don't know what you don't know. You have to start with you. You have to, once you figure it out, okay, this is where I'm at, let's figure out, how do you start a dialogue? How do you start a conversation? How do I learn about another culture? And a lot of the times we say, well, let me go talk to somebody of a different culture. But I will caution you, this word tokenism, don't go talk to one person and say, okay, did it, we're good. Why? Because if I lined 10 RBTs that work out of where you all work, if I lined up 10 of your coworkers and ask them the same question, I can almost guarantee you I'm gonna get 10 different answers. So trying to gain as much information from folks as possible should be the goal. So again, make sure you're talking to more than just one person. And this is something that I think is really, really cool. And I really would suggest you all do this, even in your own quiet time. Conduct an honest and critical self-assessment of who you are. And one of the tools that I always have any of my staff do as we're doing training is I have them actually complete the Hayes assessment, and it's called the addressing framework. And the reason why I think that this is this is an outstanding assessment, actually, I'll show you why, is because it takes culture and it breaks it down into some cultural domains. And it's age, disability, both acquired and developmental, orientation sexual orientation, gender, religious and spiritual identity, ethnic, racial identity, socioeconomic status, national origin, indigenous heritage. Now, what I'm going to warn you of is, although Dr. Hayes broke down these bad boys into these domains, we can take them just a couple of steps further. But this basic, again, make this into what you want it to be. And what you do is you sit down and you identify where you are in this situation. And what I'm going to suggest to you is first go through it, put it down, grab a glass of wine, some coffee, go wash some dishes, take a shower, and then come back to it. Reread it, think about it. Are you sure? Are you sure this is where you want to be? And kind of do that over and over again, because I can guarantee you, as you continue to look and delve down deeper into who you are and how you identify, this will indeed change. I will also say this. This is the assessment, and the reason why I love this assessment is you don't share it with the world. You don't share it with everybody. If I showed you all the first time I did this bad boy, it would shock you. And the reason why I love this assessment, because it allows you to, again, you're collecting a baseline on yourself. I didn't know, and I am 30 some odd years. Oh, Lord, that did just happen. I'm 36 years old. I never thought I would be the person. I always used to hear my mother and father, oh, these young people, these young people, these young people. And I kept saying I would never be that person. Well, found myself a couple of days ago saying it's this young generation. I don't know what they doing. And I could hear my mother and father screaming through my mouth. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I had to go back to my to my addressing framework and say, okay, I know where I'm at. So now I have to think about how do I address this younger generation? Because this younger generation is different than what I have grown up with. And not good, not bad. They're just a different flavor. So I have to be able to work with them because I'm employing a lot of them. So again, I'll send this to you all, but beautiful action steps in my last few minutes with you all. First and foremost, congratulations, because you heard me talk for a little while, and that is always that's always a feat in and of itself. But one thing that I will say is once you all leave here, don't just let this be the only time that you all listen or hear about, about competency and culture and diversity. I want you all to seek out podcasts. There are thousands of them out there. There are books, as well as Dr. Tag so graciously put in a couple of things in, oh yeah, I know that one. Put that into the chat. There are articles, there's a lot of research that has been completed. You do not have to recreate the wheel, you just have to find it. So seek out authentic conversations. If y'all ever want to have a conversation about culture, about competency, call me. I am so here for it. Why? Because I would rather you all have the conversation and learn than to be caught out there on whim. As well as self-reflect, all of that fun stuff, speak up. But one of the things I will tell you, don't be afraid because you're going to mess up the first few times. I can promise you of it. You're going to put your foot in your mouth, but it's okay. Because at the end of the day, all of this is a never-ending story. Just like we would not expect our kiddos to get it on their first try, we need to we teach them and we work with them and we provide reinforcement. We provide all of these things. It's a never-ending story when it comes to addressing diversity and competency. It's always going to be a never-ending story. Hopefully, till the day you die. As well as if there are, questions, I know I cut it short. Lord, I can talk. But again, y'all, hopefully I updated that. If y'all have no questions, comments, concerns, or whatever the situation may be, y'all, that is not the right address. I will put the right address in there. Well, I'll put the right address in there when I send over the PowerPoint. But y'all, honestly, thank y'all so much. Y'all are absolutely amazing. And I know that there's a lot of things that y'all could be doing on Wednesday nights because I've got a couple of reports to write myself. But thank you all so much for just taking the opportunity to gain a little bit more and to delve a little bit deeper. Thank you all. Dr. Becca, I believe I made you a panelist.
Yes, I think we are good to go. I appreciate that. Cannot start your video because the host stopped it.
No,
you know what? Nobody needs to see me anyways. That is totally fine. Shawn, thank you so much. As always, your knowledge, but more than that, your humanness comes through. And I think that is what we all need most, right? Is to be humans with other humans. And I so appreciate you both in this endeavor and all the others. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm going to stop this recording for everyone. Take a couple minutes break, go pee, get a drink, and we'll have Ashley get set up next. And again, thank you, Shawn. I appreciate it.
Thank you.